also civilized, to have rather different points of view. Now, what's going to happen? What difference does it make? So, then, I'm putting Christianity in the context of Hinduism to make a special case, to give a specific example of the sort of thing that would happen. I'm not saying that it is going to happen just like this. I'm trying to indicate general directions. So then, the Hindu looks at Christianity and he says, good heavens, isn't that amazing? For here, in the many, many forms of being which the Supreme Self, the Brahman, plays at being, here comes the Christian soul. This is a new identity which the dancer of the universe is playing. And he's playing as far out as he can get. He is dancing, not dancing. He is playing that he is not God at all and never was. And that he absolutely not that. Don't you dare claim any kinship with the Father. He created you out of nothing. You are not begotten. You are made. The Son, the Logos, is begotten, you see. The creature is made and can be a son of God by adoption only. The whole human race is orphaned. And God is the Father by adopting, you see. So the Hindu would say, look at that. And what's more, this orphan is now adopted, but goodness, what conditions? Once you become adopted, you become responsible for making that choice between the good and evil. And if you choose the evil, you are lost forever. Absolutely lost, and you won't just be annihilated. You'll spend all the endless cycles of time in excruciating and ineffable agony. You will exist bodily as well as spiritually. You'll be devoured by ever-renewed worms and consumed by fires that will penetrate to the inmost centers of your nerves. You should hear the theologians describe it. If you look at my book, The Two Hands of God, I've got quotes in there from a great, very sophisticated German theologian, Matthias Scheben, who is one of the great horror writers of all time, because he describes hell in the most sophisticated philosophical language. That's something that the ordinary preacher doesn't do, like Jonathan Edwards describing a sinner in the hands of an angry God. He'll use just ordinary vivid imagery. But Scheben goes into philosophical categories. I mean, he makes this so horrendous because he is obviously such a great intellectual, describing the reality of physical torments as well as spiritual torments in hell. So you see the predicament that the Christian soul is faced with. So the Hindu looks at that, you see, and says, that is something. Here, the action, the big act, is so good that the actor himself is totally taken in by his part. It's as if Hamlet actually slew Polonius on the stage. The actor of Hamlet actually slew the actor of Polonius, you see. The drama is out of hand. But the Hindu knows it will recover because it's all right. Don't worry, you know. It's okay, there's a doctor in the house. But from his point of view, you see, he sees this as a very remarkable religion. But now once we've looked at it that way, we've let the cat out of the bag, haven't we? Once you look at it that way, you can never go back to being an ordinary Christian. You know, you've seen that there is a twinkle in the Father's eye. And when he says, dresses himself up in his official robes, puts on his beard and his panoplies of spiritual war, and all the angels gather around, and he says, thou shalt love me, and all these conditions, and you shall, and this and that and the other. You look him in the eye. Of course, the angels are supposed to veil their faces. Of course they don't look God in the eye, because that would give the show away. But there's a hymn which ends up with the aspiration, prostrate before thy throne to lie, and gaze on thee. You think what an interesting rubber neck you have to do that. So, anyway, the thing is, you see, if you look in the eye of God, you notice there's a twinkle in it. Because if he is a God as a true father is always like this. The father says to the child, look now, you've got to stay in that playpen. Because the child is getting big enough to get out, and then you don't know if you're going to get into the gas stove and the electric light system or something. And eventually the child climbs out of the playpen. He's been told, you must stay in it. But the father is a little bit angry, but at the same time he's pleased because it means the child is growing up. Well, so in the same way, there must be a twinkle in the father's eye. Just as I explained to you, there is always a twinkle in the guru's eye. Because the guru knows who you are, even if you claim that you don't. The guru knows you are the supreme Brahman in disguise, or Shiva, or whatever aspect you want to assume. And you're in disguise, and you won't admit it. It's like in forms of certain psychoanalytical gambits. One of the basic gambits of psychoanalysis is that all behavior which the patient describes as involuntary is interpreted to him by the analyst as voluntary. Involuntary behavior is, say, dreams. And the analyst raises the question, what do you mean by those dreams? Then he switches it. When the patient does certain behavior, the patient interprets as voluntary, the analyst brings it back to him and says, I wonder what compelled you to do that. And then the unconscious is brought up, you see, as the source of involuntary behavior. But sometimes in one context the unconscious is interpreted as something that happens to you. But in another context it's interpreted as your own real and secret intent, which you won't admit. This is a beautiful, really. It's a very interesting technique. And you don't need to use it. You don't need to believe the Freudian mythology that goes along with it. But as a technique, it is very interesting indeed. So, in the same way, you must now see God the Father in the Christian context as Guru, and Jesus Christ also as Guru, coming on very seriously about thou shalt love and all this business about hell and so on, and challenging you. Now, what is the nature of the challenge? This is the crucial point. The nature of the challenge is the famous double bind. You are required and commanded to perform an act which will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily. And every stratagem is used to bring this home. And this central stratagem is the crucifixion. When I was a boy in England, we used to attend the Good Friday services naturally, and at the door, the clergyman would hand each of us a colored picture of Christ on the cross, a very sad, dejected Christ, and written underneath in Gothic script, the verse, this have I done for thee, what doest thou for me? And it wasn't simply, they weren't so naive as that they felt that that would make you put a little bit more in the collection. It poses a very vivid problem, you see, because they put it this way to you. You really crucified Christ. There's a whole strain of mysticism in Christianity whereby the events of the gospel are eternal events. The birth of Christ has to become the birth of Christ in man's heart. The crucifixion is something that you did. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? If the crucifixion was a merely historical event, the answer is simply no. But were you there when they crucified my Lord? Obviously, this mystique wants to impress that you were, that indeed you were a party to it. So you see then, you begin to see that the crucified Christ somehow involves and contains all misery inflicted upon the innocent. Are they innocent or not? What are you going to do about it? The more you realize this, the more you realize that you cannot escape responsibility for all the horrors that are going on in the world. After all, you don't live except by eating dead creatures. Even if you're a vegetarian, the soft, luscious vegetables, the lettuce suffers in its own particular way when you crunch it. And so the grapes, when you squeeze them to make your wine, and the wheat grains, when you grind them up to make your bread, they suffer. You bet they suffer. Certainly the pigs and the cows and the sheep do when we slay them for our entree. And so you can't live at all without crucifying something, without sticking nails into it and spikes. And go on to that, what about other people? We are all living by mutual exploitation. Those of us who belong to the middle class in the United States, which is fairly prosperous, are managing collectively, more or less, to exploit each other only minimally. But we are living off heaven only knows what kinds of depressed Indians, Mexicans, Africans, Negroes in this country, and so on and so on, you see? It's exploitation through and through. You cannot get, say, to the top in business without putting somebody else down. And so you begin to realize this, and you start feeling awfully guilty. And so this is the meaning, this is the idea of the man hanging on the cross. What are you going to do about that? That's the question. And you think, well, oh dear, what can I do about it? Maybe I'd just better abandon everything and become a medical missionary like Albert Schweitzer. Do something heroic. Go down to the South and be crucified by the people in Mississippi because you're helping the Negroes. Well, all right, what about the medical missionary thing? Will you be able to go down and give medicines to those people that don't come from drug firms, which use some pretty questionable practices? Of course, you'll have to stop paying at least that part of your income tax that goes to the armaments race. But then what about sales tax? That indirectly gets there too, doesn't it? Where do you stop? See, then you suddenly, the more you think about these things, you realize you're completely involved. And there is no way out. You are a bastard. You did it. You know that poem of Kenneth Rexroth about the death of Dylan Thomas? You did it. You in your grey flannel suit, etc. So, this is what one comes to see. Now, before we explore that critical point further, let's look at various other considerations. First of all, a lot of people, when they get there, think, oh dear. Well, there is one way I know I can be spiritually secure. To be sure that I hurt. So long as I really enjoy myself, I'm frightfully guilty and obviously sinful. But if I hurt, it isn't quite so bad. At least I'm doing something in the direction of making payment for this frightful affront which my life consists in. Oh, I thank the good Lord for my boils, for my mental and bodily pains, for without them my faith all congeals, and I'm doomed to hell's ne'er